It's over 9,000!
Welcome, Super Elite Warriors, to Final Forum, a podcast for the discussion of all things Dragon Ball. I am your host, Jelli, an elite recruiting member of the Frieza Force, on a mission to find the best warriors from across the galaxy to join the greatest army of all time, and I am joined, as always, by my new recruit co-host.
This is the Bekinney.
And this is our Dragon Ball-oween. We have no time for frivolousness and foolishness, like we usually indulge in.
Well, no, we are super serious in the Frieza Force. What are you talking about?
We have no time for silliness today. We got a lot to get through today. And today, I'm pretty sure you noticed from the title of the episode, but if for some reason you didn't look at the title of the episode, today it is full episode 1 of Dragon Ball-oween, and we're going to be talking about Sand Land. Akira Toriyama's manga and now anime and video game franchise. At this point, is it Toriyama's third biggest franchise at this point? I guess how do you quantify Dragon Quest?
Well, I would say Dragon Quest is probably his biggest.
Do you think that's his though? Because
well, I mean, it's kind of synonymous with him because its entire art style is based on his, and he's done a ton of character designs for monsters and characters and throughout the life of that series.
So then that would drop Sandland to 4th, I would think then. So yes, today we're going to be talking about Sandland, and we're going to do our best to cover every element of it, I think.
Yeah, I got a little snippet here. I didn't want to do, normally when we watch, episodes of anime, I do like an episode recap. I didn't want to do that here because honestly, I feel like this is something that people should experience at least a little bit blind to it about what's going to happen, because they do some interesting things with the story.
And it's on Hulu?
Yes, it's on Hulu, and I think, is it on Disney Plus as well?
Yeah, it's on Hulu in the US. I think in other countries it's on Disney Plus. We'll try not to be spoilery. If we do, eventually we're going to get into spoilers, and when we do, I think we'll try and throw a spoiler tag on it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't have any spoilers in here, so we should be good. We should be good for this part, at least, I think. All right. So, 50 years ago, the entire world turned into a desert. Humans started fighting in a desperate attempt to acquire water. The rain ceased and the rivers ran dry. Water now only comes from a single source, and that source is controlled by the king. Sounds like something out of Mad Max, doesn't it? Well, you're not far off, in my opinion. Sandland, I believe, is Toriyama's take on the post-apocalyptic dystopia. He touches on some very adult topics like corruption, colonialism, and genocide, but he also talks about things like honor, redemption, and responsibility. He makes a few very salient points about the restriction of resources in a society to prop up the ruling class. And if Dragon Ball was apolitical, it's very hard for me to assume the same thing is going on here. However, despite having a lot to say about such heavy topics, Toriyama still manages to infuse this short series with an immense amount of charm, and the cast, including minor characters like the swimmers, have rewarding story arcs that pay off beautifully in the conclusion of the first part of the story. The art is very much what we've come to expect from the creator of Dragon Ball, and his technical drawing skills really shine in the vehicles and technology of the setting. The juxtaposition of these masses of metal and engineering against the classic Toriyama character designs sort of mirrors that clash of serious topics and irreverent humor that's present in the story itself. It's actually very fitting, I think, that we are talking about Sandland after finishing Dragon Ball, as this feels as close to a spiritual successor, I think, as anything I've ever seen.
I could see that. Following the end of Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama did not cease working entirely. And when I say the end of Dragon Ball, I'm not talking about the Dragon Ball portion of Dragon Ball where we are right now. I'm talking about the end of his original run of Dragon Ball, which includes what we call Dragon Ball Z.
Mm-hmm.
So he got to the end. He didn't just stop working entirely. He still produced various one-shots and short works for Shueisha, including Alien Pecky and Tokimecha, Babul of Demon Village, Kawa, and Kajika from 96 through 98. And I think Kawa, actually, if you asked him, he had said for a long time that was the favorite thing he ever made. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to track that down at some point.
Definitely.
The workload, though, on all this was much lessened for him, as these were more casual gigs, and they'd run once or for a few short weeks, with his involvement being a selling point to try and pump up sales of whatever Shueisha magazine they found themselves in. Sandland was serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump from May to August 2000 and collected into a single tankobon, or trade paperback, in November of that year. For its U.S. release, it started running in Viz Media's Shonen Jump magazine in 2003, and then was released in a single volume in December of that year. A full kanzenban with some color pages and original rough sketches from Toriyama was released in Japan in 2023, and a full color version began running in Saikyo Jump in September 2023 to replace the full color run of Dragon Ball GT's Animanga, which ended at that time. And an Animanga is a manga based on an anime as opposed to the more traditional other way around. Prior to the release of Akira Toriyama's manga Theater by Viz in 2021, Sandland was one of the few Toriyama works that was actually licensed and released in English. So you had, like, obviously Dr. Slump and obviously Dragon Ball and Sandland. I can't remember if Kawa was, and then I think the only other one that was at that point was Nekomajin, but not even all of Nekomajin. Toriyama said that he wanted to try his hand at a more bleak world and darker story, but that he also had no interest in writing or drawing things that are more realistic and down to earth. He figured if he was going to take the time to write something, it might as well be fantastical. He also mentioned that he has long been interested in the subject, the idea of a world subjected to drought, and that bears out as he previously wrote a one-shot called Mysterious Rainjack and another called Pink the Rainjack, and that one, like I mentioned, it's actually available in Akira Toriyama's manga Theater, Pink the Rainjack, and it received an anime film adaptation also. I did watch that, actually, recently. It's not bad. But
okay.
We'll talk about it like maybe separately or something another time.
All right.
He intended for Sandland to kind of be his last hurrah and wanted it to be his, so much so that he didn't utilize an assistant, and he drew the entirety of the work himself every single week. In terms of what, for lack of a better term, we might call real work, he held fairly true to this being his last thing for about 13 years. After Sandland wrapped up, he wrote a few chapters over the course of several years of Nekomajin Z, and Nekomajin Z is a cat-based Dragon Ball Z parody. So he also worked on a one-shot with One Piece creator Ichiro Oda called Cross Epoch. He did character work for the game Blue Dragon and its accompanying anime adaptation, and did a few one-shots in 2008 and 2009. And now that might sound like a lot, but over the course of 13 years, it was, by my count, like 12 total manga chapters and character designs for one game. That's not all that much. He's still working, obviously, but very casually, very much on his own terms, up until Dragon Ball Evolution makes him decide to come back to Dragon Ball, and he starts working on it heavily with the movie Dragon Ball Battle of Gods, which wound up pulling him back more into regular serialization with Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, and then his work with Toyotaru on Dragon Ball Super and the manga and anime and everything there. And then really his last big contributions to everything are the Dragon Ball Super movie, superhero, Sand Land, which is now out and ready for everyone and has been for months. And then there's Daima, which at the time that this gets released, I think will already be starting.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to Daima. But Daima will be like the last thing with a lot of Toriyama influence. Well, a lot of Toriyama direct oversight.
Yeah. Speaking of Toriyama, he stated once in an interview that he lost the hand grip pen holder he used throughout his career shortly after the end of Sandland and couldn't find a new one that felt right in his hand. It's basically his excuse for why he hardly wrote anymore. Toriyama said he wanted Sandland to be something he did for himself that he would enjoy, which was why he had a demon as the main character, included a tank as a major piece of the story, and set it in a desert where backgrounds would be easy to draw. He wound up finding the tank extremely time-consuming to draw, which I can understand, because once you see the art for it, you see that he was very detail-oriented on that, and regretted bringing it in, but had already committed to it, and for once in his career had the entire storyline planned out, and the tank was part of it, and he had to keep drawing it week after week, which he claimed led him to barely sleep. With the story being more mature in his mind and incorporating themes of fates intertwined through past events, Toriyama knew there would have to be many older characters, but also he wanted the story accessible for shonen readers, so he circumvented the challenge by having Beelzebub be very old in human years, but still very young in the demon realm. He got to have an immature, boyish character who was simultaneously old enough to have some connection to the past history of the world. He said Beelzebub was his favorite character in the story ultimately because he found the character had just the right amount of strength and wasn't too far beyond normal human strength in the way his past characters were. How about some classic Toriyama subversions and inversions? He makes demons the heroes of the story. He has a character, Beelzebub, who outwardly says that he's nasty and evil, but is perhaps the most heroic character in this story. In an interview, he said he completely inverted his story of creation. The backstory of Sandland, in his mind, is that God created almost all living things, but the devil created demons and humanity. Satan created humans on a lark and gave them lessened abilities and intelligence, getting basically his jollies from watching them flail around uselessly. Eventually, humans, however, exceeded the power they were originally granted, I'm assuming through technology, bringing complaints from God, and so Satan struck them down, bringing them calamity from which they would have to rebuild. He also said he modeled the tank after a penguin, which I can kind of see now that I read that, both in opposition to the desert setting and against what one would expect from a tank, normally being kind of like lower to the ground, very low profile and boxy.
Yeah, and he said like my tank would be super easy. He has like all this. If you read the interview that I read, which I found the interview on Kanzenshu's website, if you read the interview, he has like all this like really in-depth backstory. It seems like for this, you know, like I said, all this stuff with that you just mentioned with God creating everything, but the devil created humanity, and then
and these things are also never mentioned in the manga, by the way.
Never.
These are all just extraneous things that he thought of.
And then like with the tank being designed after a penguin, he said like, yeah, normally a tank would be super low profile so that it wouldn't flip over. He's like, my tank is super top heavy, it would flip over immediately, which is why they had to use the anti-grav stones.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
In order to lighten the top heaviness of it and make it able to like roll around on the ground. There's these things in these tanks that make them, that are called anti-grav stones, that are just meant to make the tanks lighter.
It's just it's magic. Don't think about it too much.
But so before getting further into these notes, I think like I'll try ripping the story a bit. Yeah, it's the story of a sheriff, Rao, who is trying to find a spring because he has seen these birds that are water birds. and he
like
sees them like
kingfishers or something like that.
Yeah, he sees them every year at this time of year, and he thinks they're on like a migratory thing to a spring. And everyone's like, "That's crazy. There's no water. The only person who has water is the king." And he's like, "Yeah, I think because he has this spring, and he's not telling us about it. We got to go find this spring." And so it's like a road trip movie with Rao and Beelzebub and a character that they call Thief, and they have to go on this road trip to find the water. And then there's a whole lot of stuff with them and interacting with other people and potentially
shenanigans ensue
and potentially finding the water. And then and with the anime adaptation. So here's what happened. There was a movie that came out in Japan. Was it last year? Was it 2023? It's kind of not all that important because it came out as a movie that was like, I think 107 minutes long. Like I think an hour 47. And then when they announced that it was...
looks like it was... July of 2023 is when it was released.
Okay, so July of 23. It was released as a movie in Japan. And then they announced that it's coming to the US. Except it's not coming as a movie, it's coming as a series. And that... Initially, when I first was reading about this, I was like, that's very confusing. Why aren't we getting the movie? And I originally very much intended to watch the series and then try and track down the movie. And then I watched the series. And it's not that I actually wouldn't watch the movie. I actually will maybe talk more about this. Well, whatever. We'll just kind of let the thoughts flow for a bit. But I maybe would watch the movie because I would potentially be interested in seeing a shorter version of it. But what the show is for the first, I think, 6 episodes is it is the movie just with some more scenes added. So each episode of the show is about, 22 or 24 minutes.
Yep.
And there's like an intro song and an outro song. So each episode is actually about 19 to 20 minutes. Times 6.
I do want to jump in real quick. The opening and ending theme are worth a watch too, by the way. They're really well done.
The opening theme was. I didn't watch the ending theme ever because oops.
Because the story was so good, you just wanted to get to the next episode.
Yeah. But so there's about 2 hours of actual animation within this Sandland anime, the first 6 episodes. And so like 13 minutes ish, 10 to 13 minutes probably of like additional stuff that wasn't in the movie. So really it's not that much different of an experience, I wouldn't think. Although 10 minutes could kind of be a lot. And then what they did when they released it here is they released those first 6 episodes and the 7th all in the first day. Because they're like, everyone knows the story of Sandland, right? So here's 7 episodes. And I think they were hoping that people would just throw it on, kind of knowing what Sandland was, thinking there's 7 episodes. And then the 7th episode is actually like the start of a whole new storyline for our 3 main characters. And then they released 1 episode every week for a while until they got to the 13th episode. So, who are our characters in this? Let's talk about them a little bit. There's our main character, kind of, Beelzebub. And I say kind of because I think it's between him and Rao.
I would argue that Rao is actually the main character for
I
this
kind
show.
of would too. But Beelzebub is like who the marketing is all focused around.
Yeah.
And he's yet another case of Toriyama inverting things and playing on culture to create something different. Sandland's Beelzebub is a young, brazen, handsome prince of the demons and the hero of the story. Beelzebub culturally is one of the great demons of the Christian religion. Beelzebub is also known as Lord of the Flies, one of the 7 princes of hell, and is even sometimes used as another name for Satan himself. Opinions differ slightly on what exactly the name means, as it may also translate to Lord of all that flies, but it derives from Ball-zebub, with Baal being given the title given to gods of the Semitic people and ultimately used to describe Philistinic gods who were not Yahweh, the Judeo-Christian God. Beelzebub was a god of Ekron and was often depicted as expelling flies, the cause of people's sickness. Thus, he's the lord of the literal flies themselves. There's also a possibility that the name derives from Baal-zevul, which means lord of the heavenly dwelling, and was used as a derogatory pun by the Israelites to describe a god who was not their own and thus had no power. Over centuries, and thanks to the works of various exorcists and even John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost, Beelzebub has come to be seen as a high-ranking demon of hell, often the second in command after Satan and one of the most prominent fallen angels of Christian religion. And Beelzebub is, like I said, he's the hero of this story, and it's actually, like, it's one of the kind of recurring jokes is he's like, I'm bad, and you should never say that I'm good or a nice guy. In fact, just yesterday, and he, like, talks about all the bad things he did, and it's always like, I stayed up without going to bed. Like,
I didn't brush my teeth.
Yeah. And, you know, as Rao is getting to know him, he's like, you've never, like, killed anyone? And he's like, why would I kill humans? They're so weak and stupid. Why? It's, like, dumb to even kill them. And Rao's like, huh. And then later on, he's like, Rao is like, I killed many people in the war. And Beelzebub and Thief are like, what? So that's like a recurring, like, theme is that yeah, the demons in general are, like, less evil than everyone thinks. Then there's Sheriff Rao, and he's another character with some layers to him, not only in a literary sense, but culturally. Rao is both an Indian and a Chinese surname, and researching the word and name Rao led to some interesting parallels, especially considering who this character is in this story. Starting where Toriyama might actually have drawn some inspiration from, Rao is a character in the Greyhawk campaign of Dungeons & Dragons and is a god of peace, reason, and serenity. His symbol is of a simple white heart, and if you look at some of the early colorization art of Sheriff Rao, the badge over his own heart appears to be whitish in color. So, maybe. I'll try to remember to post some of these images to social media as well. But Rao, the name Rao, that's also the name of a main antagonist in Fist of the North Star. And he's dubbed the supreme ruler of the century's end. Toriyama was likely playing on inverting the main antagonist of a manga that provided him some inspiration, as, if you remember, Kazuhiko Torishima told Toriyama he should look at some Fist of the North Star for tips on how to make Dragon Ball more popular. Or he was directly playing on a Dungeons & Dragons thing. Digging around further, I also found that Rao is also a variation of the title Raj, or Rai, which is a historical title of nobility in the Indian subcontinent, derived from the word Raja, or king. Rao were given immense power even during British rule and were considered autonomous native rulers, with the title Rao Bahadur being an honor bestowed upon individuals for outstanding acts of service to the empire. Did Toriyama know that? Unlikely. But it is just kind of a super interesting parallel with a lot of this Sandland's themes of, like, about colonialism, and especially, like, with the character of Rao and kind of his reveals, as now we're going to get a little more spoilery. He, like, was a former general working for the army of the king. Yeah. Then there's also how General Rao is also known as, or Sheriff Rao, rather, is also known as General Shiva. This is obviously meant to be an intimidating name, and it's one that Rao is attempting to leave behind, as Shiva was the destroyer of Hinduism, and Rao no longer wishes to associate himself with that past history of destruction. Again, we're probably going to kick the can of Shiva discussion further down the road, because we can talk about, like, gods of destruction in Dragon Ball Super.
That seems like a good idea.
But I found some of that stuff with Rao interesting. Then there's Thief. He's the third of our main trio. And it's interesting. He's this old demon that Beelzebub insists come with them on their adventure because none of the other demons want to, because it's going to be very dangerous and they're going to have to be working close with a human, and none of them trust humans very much. But his character in Japanese is Shifu. Actually, is his name. And that means like master or teacher. Now, why it was changed to thief for English is kind of anyone's guess. Now, granted, he does steal things, and he is stated to be like a master thief.
Yeah.
And he like dresses as Santa Claus whenever he does it.
Because it's the perfect disguise.
Because if
nobody
he gets
would
caught,
suspect Santa Claus of stealing things.
And he's like, because if you get, doesn't he say at one point, like, if you get caught, you could just pretend you're Santa delivering gifts or something, or on a dry run basically. Or something. He says something like that. I feel like, yeah, it is just like, it's like, in case you get caught, no one will think you're a demon. They'll just think you're Santa. But like, we know English audiences can handle a character named Shifu thanks to Kung Fu Panda.
I think it has to do with how his name is said in Japanese, and it comes across more as Sheef instead of Shifu. And I think maybe there was a mix up there in translation where somebody's like oh well, he steals things. They call him Sheef, and in order to kind of like sync up the voice lines a little bit better, maybe we just call him Thief. Like maybe. That's kind of my thought there.
Maybe. Yeah. But yes, so he's like this, like, it would make more sense for him to be Shifu. He's this older, and what's actually, again, this is like another Toriyama playing on subversions and things. He looks way older than Beelzebub, and he is like his kind of, he's kind of his advisor, or his like right-hand man, or his vizier, or whatever you want to call it, right?
I actually kind of, because of the way Beelzebub's father kind of uses him as his eyes when he can't be around him. I kind of like interpret him almost as like a retainer.
Yeah. Yes. And he is positioned as being like, he's drawn considerably older than Beelzebub, but then when they talk about how old everyone is, he says he's not that much older than Beelzebub, actually. He just
was really unlucky in the looks department. Nobody, you can't hate people for that.
Okay, I think that's
beyond their control.
I think that's Toriyama like playing with subversions and everything again. Is you think here's this character who looks so much older and is plays sort of a mentor part, and then you find out that he's basically the same age as this like young fool. Then there's a few other characters. So one of the other main characters is General Are, and this is a character that our trio come across early on, and they have like an interaction with them where because they're stealing this tank in order to get across the desert safely, because the desert is a dangerous place, he's trying to stop them, because you don't want someone stealing your tank. Sheriff Rao manages to, with such pinpoint accuracy, demobilize the other tanks without hurting anyone, that this General Are is like, oh, this guy's, you are General Shiva, like you're the guy I've heard of, right? And he's like, yeah, I am.
If you'd like to remain spoiler-free on Sand Land, skip ahead to 49 minutes and 40 seconds and you should be safe.
And this Are becomes sort of an ally.
Yeah, he basically switches sides.
Yes. Talking about Are gets into talking about some of the differences between the anime and the manga version.
Yeah.
And I thought what he did in I think it was the anime, actually worked a little better for me than in the manga. In the anime, he picks up his headset after he meets Sheriff Rao, and they have their I'll try not to keep it super spoilery, but they have their discussion of what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And Are gets his headset on, and first he says to his men, boy, it's a shame that we didn't see Sheriff Rao and General Shiva, isn't it? We like never, and his guys are like, oh yeah. It is a shame. And then he gets on his headset and he says, if in the anime, this says, he's like, if anyone is at the headquarters, which is at the south end of the base, or the river, repeat, that's the headquarters at the south end. Like, he's basically giving away the location without giving it away. He's like, got plausible deniability here. Versus in the manga, he just gets on his headset and he tells Shiva, like, hey, just so you know, the base is there, go attack it. Like,
yeah.
It just made him seem less, like, the anime made it seem like, again, that plausible deniability thing that I kind of thought it just was a little bit more clever. So there's General Are, and he is the son of General Appo, who was a friend of Sheriff Rao in the Great War that caused Sand Land to be the way that it is. They all worked under General Zeyu. Now, Zeyu, Appo, and Are are all plays on gods. There's Zeyu is Zeus, Appo Apollo, and Are Ares. Here we got Toriyama is stealing from Christian demons, Hindu deities, and titles, and Greek gods to create something of his own. And now, why did he choose Apollo, Ares, and Zeus? I mean, aside from, like, just the idea of, like, the main general being Zeus, and, like, that's the main leader of the gods and stuff, Apollo and Ares are both sons of Zeus, with Apollo being, like, a favored son and Ares being disliked. We could see some typical Toriyama subversions here, too, as Ares is typically a god of war, but General Are is a bit less prone to violence. So, this is another, it's like a kind of interesting one where Toriyama's playing on a lot of he's like both playing into things and subverting them. He's playing into Zeus is the leader and the head, and Apollo is the more favored, and, like, you know, Appo was more liked by Zeyu than Are is. So he's like playing right into those things, but then he's also playing against type with General Are being a little bit, like, more level-headed and less of a warmonger. And Beelzebub could basically be a Saiyan if he was colored differently. Zeyu looks like Frieza in his floating chair, and characters all have, like, theme named puns. The fingerprints of Toriyama are just all over this thing. You've got, you know, everyone in the army's got, like, some kind of Greek god pun name, and then there's like the swimmers.
Oh, I love the swimmers so much.
Oh, they're so great. they're this roving band of, like, desert bandits who call themselves the swimmers.
Which there's no water around.
There's no water around in Sandland. And then B, they're all named at, like, there's like Shark and Guppy and...
Yeah, they're all, like, named after, like,
Pike.
Fish and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, Pike is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so the anime adaptation. On December 8th, 2022, Bandai Namco opened a website for Sandland Project and uploaded a teaser video featuring Toriyama's art. The website featured a countdown that ended on December 17th when it announced that Sandland would receive a CGI anime adaptation. The anime is co-produced by Sunrise, Bandai Namco's primary animation arm, as well as Kimikaze Doga and Anima. The anime is directed by Toshishisa Yokoshima, who began his career as an animation director for the Mega Man X series, working on Mega Man X Command Mission and Mega Man X8, before debuting as a director in 2017's Co-Collars, a 45-minute film in which humanity attempts to survive in a world where ash perpetually falls from the sky after Mount Fuji has erupted. I didn't see this, but I think you did, right?
I just saw, like, I looked it up because it sounded possibly interesting, and it looks pretty cool, maybe from a very quick glance. Like, I might try and track it down and watch it.
Yeah, maybe we could work it in here somewhere.
Maybe.
I don't know. Supervising direction was Hiroshi Kojina, a well-established director who has worked on Hunter x Hunter and is currently the head of Studio Live, which I feel like we've mentioned before. They're an animation studio that's lent their talents to basically everything you've ever heard of in terms of anime. They did, like, 22 episodes of Dragon Ball, 53 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, several of the movies, even the plan to eradicate the Super Saiyans OVA, which we'll get to at some point in the future. Music was composed by Yugo Kanno, who has done music for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, great show, highly recommended, and Batman Ninja, among many other titles.
Batman Ninja, crazy. We should get to that at some point somehow.
I would gladly watch that one again. That's a great one. Toriyama did the character work on all the new characters that were part of the anime.
Yeah, or at least all the ones that like matter. Like,
yeah. The big ones.
Yeah, like the antagonist of the second half for sure, and the girl that ends up befriending the group, and the cyborg general guy. He definitely did all those. But I don't know if he did like Villager 14.
I know that originally when they were doing the second story for Sandland, they actually didn't have the main antagonist in there. He wasn't part of it. It was just the cyborg general.
Hmm.
And then Toriyama actually was like, yeah, no, we should definitely put this character in there.
Hmm.
So it was actually being developed without that character, and he stepped in and was like, no, we should totally add this guy in here.
Ah, okay. So on the voice cast piece, we won't go through everyone, but I wanted to do the main trio and then people who have special connections to this podcast's areas of interest. So Matsumi Tamura is Beelzebub. He's a prolific voice. Oh, I'm sorry. Matsumi Tamura as Beelzebub is a prolific voice actress with Naruto Shippuden and Dragon Quest among her many, many titles. And then there's Kazuhiro Yamaji as Rao, which this guy does Dragon Ball Super. He does Hit in Dragon Ball Super. Cho is Thief. This is another prolific actor with roles in One Piece, Inuyasha, Black Clover, Hunter x Hunter, Naruto Shippuden, and Batman Ninja. And there's Chafurin as the King, which is Dragon Ball GT's Heize Shenron.
Why did we add this guy to the list? Sorry, I had to get my jab at Dragon Ball GT in. We're good now.
Keith Silverton is the English voice actor for Satan, or as he's called in the English version, just Lucifer. They don't call him Satan.
Can't have those suburban moms, getting offended.
This gives us a Godzilla reference here, as Keith previously lent his voice to the Godzilla anime trilogy of films made for Netflix by Polygon, which I will not hold against him, or at least I'll try not to. Those are 3 of the absolute worst Godzilla things that have ever been created. They're terrible. And then there's also Tomokazu Sugita as Papa, the leader of the Swimmers, who is Lemmo in Dragon Ball Super, and was also in the Polygon Godzilla movies, and I might hold that against them slightly more.
Nice.
I think before getting into the video game, talk about just everything here. The anime adaptation, the manga. I really liked it a lot.
I am so sad that this became popular at this point in time and not when Toriyama originally did the work, because I could absolutely watch hundreds of episodes of this show. I love this show. The way the themes that he covers, the characters themselves are just ridiculous but wholesome and competently written at the same time. The art is gorgeous. Even with the anime, me personally, I've not been a huge fan of the CGI animation for anime. This one I think did a pretty decent job. I think the only thing that I noticed that was an issue was for those really long shots. I don't know what went wrong, but for some reason the 3D models for the characters and like the vehicles and stuff get really pixelated at a long distance. Up close they look great, but as they get progressively further away in those longer shots, they just look more and more terrible. That was really the only issue that I had with the visuals.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good. I thought we talked about when we saw the superhero movie that like the first, 5 minutes or whatever, all these like gorgeous 2D things. And then it took us a minute to get into the 3D aspect of that. This I acclimated very quickly. I think part of that is because I have no other point of comparison.
Yeah.
Right. I've never seen Sandland look any other way. So very easy to get into. But I also just think it was a little bit more fluid. It looked a little bit better, and yeah, I thought visually, I thought it was actually really quite impressive generally.
I think I can't think of anything music wise that like stands out, but I think it was the music was pretty competently done. Sound was great. Yeah, like I'm just having the hardest time to think of things that I didn't like about this show.
There's a lot of conveniences in the plot and the writing. One of the big ones that's hard to like even kind of headcanon my way around is how these human characters in this world all have lived their entire lives thinking that demons are at best a nuisance and at worst like terrifying and evil.
Mm-hmm.
A demon then just tells a character a major plot reveal. Just tells him with no evidence whatsoever.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yeah, oh, okay. And then this character tells another character who he has physically fired upon.
Yeah.
And that character just goes, oh, yeah, okay.
And I feel like Toriyama also kind of saw that plot hole because of what Are does immediately after that, where he goes to find confirmation of what he's been told.
That is true. He does let them go before getting that confirmation, though.
Which, yes, is a huge plot hole. It's like you got these three people, they stole a tank, and they're telling you all kinds of crazy stories, and you just go, yep, okay, on your way.
I'll confirm this later, but...
and really, I think the only reason he does it is because he finds out who Rao really is, and then Rao is connected to his father. And I think his decision making at that point is based on what his father told him of General Shiva.
In some ways, it's almost a very easy plot hole to fix, right? You have Shifu Thief is the one who tells Rao, and then you have him tell Are, and Are be like, hang on, that sounds crazy. And then have him call the king like he does, and the king be like, what? No, I didn't do that. Say you did it.
Yeah.
And then everyone hears and everyone goes, oh, it is true, because the king just admitted it.
I almost, because there's a scene, I think it's shortly after that, or is it before, where Rao calls into the news station to reveal the conspiracy? Was that before or after he meets Are?
I think slightly after.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I almost wonder if it would have been worth it for him to have done that prior to meeting Are.
The whole all that stuff too with the media is like
it's a little
it's a little bit like, okay, so they're like, oh, we could, like, that's another one of the plot holes. Like Zayu and the king both mentioned specifically, explicitly, that they control the media. But then, like, 2 minutes later, the guys that the media has just been told are evil are calling in to be like, hey, here's a whole bunch of things here's our side of the story. Yeah, let me give the terrorists an open platform here.
Yeah, it's a little, there's definitely, it gets a little rough there in the middle with the writing for sure.
Yeah. So there's like a couple plot holes and a couple conveniences and contrivances and stuff like that. But it's funny that this is Toriyama's attempt to do like more bleak and dark and serious and stuff, because even in this you can tell that it's, and I'm not even saying this is a bad thing, but like that's not his forte. Right?
Yeah, because he still has to mix in like humor.
Yeah.
And it'll be like that same sort of Dragon Ball humor where it's something crass. And
he's not interested in like hopelessness. He really isn't.
Yeah, no, this is very much, even though the themes are dark to start out with, it's very much, I think, more about redemption and taking responsibility for your decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, there's much more of a hopefulness to it. Which part did you like better, the first part or the second part, the new stuff?
I like the first part better, and I think that's mostly because it was originally put together as like a closed storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the arcs are better in it. I feel like the arcs for the minor characters are better in it. Not that the second story is bad. I do want to put that out there. I don't think it was bad. It's just not as good as the original Toriyama stuff. Like they punched up like the climaxes of both storylines, I think.
Oh, for sure. The climax. Well, I mean, you can't punch
definitely
it up.
from the manga, but like,
Let's say you can't punch it up beyond nothing, but because the second part is just it wasn't based on anything.
Yeah.
But like, yes, the climax of the manga has Beelzebub fighting against a singular insect man that is like supposed to be a bioweapon created to, I don't know, be bad or something.
I guess.
In the anime, they made it like 6 of them?
Yeah, it was like a whole gaggle of them.
Yeah,
and then there was the airship as well in that portion.
right.
That just wasn't even in the manga at all.
Right.
But I could see why they did that, especially when you take into account the first 6 episodes were actually originally a movie.
Oh, for sure.
But then, like with the second half, the stakes get cranked up even higher, and it becomes more of the standard shonen, we have to beat the bad guy type thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it loses a little bit in the writing for that. However, I did think that the major villain for the second half was pretty good. I liked him. So yeah, it's a bit of a trade-off, but I think the first half's a little better.
Villain in the second half reminds you a smidge of like Goku Black-ish,
Yeah, definitely.
or at least maybe more Zamasu.
Yeah, I could see that, where he thinks himself above everything going on around him.
Yeah, that like righteously indignant thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I would recommend watching it. It breezes by pretty fast, the 13 episodes. And my only complaint is that it's on Hulu, where like there's a lot of commercials.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't get around that.
I did spot check the dub. I don't know if you did it all, because like Hulu has the dubbed and the subbed version.
Yeah.
I at least spot checked the dub. I didn't dig it that much.
I stayed with subs, actually.
When I turned on the dub, I thought specifically Rao just didn't sound, I don't know, grisly enough to me.
I guess I'll have to go back and check the dub then. I probably should have.
I wanted him
before
to sound
recording this
more grisly, but it didn't. I don't know. Wasn't working for me. So I went back to the subs. And the manga is a super fast read.
Yeah, it's only, is it 12 or 14 chapters?
14 chapters.
Yeah, I think I crushed that in like an hour or two.
Yeah, I read it all in one sitting.
And it's good. It's a good read. It's a lot of fun.
It is. And like I said, I do think actually if I was going to pick one, I would say that the anime slightly improves on the manga. Like I said, it just made a couple of the characters like
it fleshes things out a little bit more, yeah.
Like I said, the big one for me that like was a big difference that I felt just worked so much better was having RA be like, "Hey, if anyone's listening to this, you can leave for the day from headquarters. You know, the headquarters that's at the south end. You know that one? That like little bit of like character work and plausible deniability makes him just seem like such a smarter character."
Yeah. I feel like Toriyama's strength is his characters, and I think this series does a really good job, especially the main trio. You get a lot of really good character moments as they're traveling across the desert, and they're just interacting with themselves and nobody else.
Yes.
They play off each other perfectly.
That's another piece of the second part of it, that why the second part is maybe not quite as good as the first is they are split up a little bit more.
Yeah, but I also think that the new characters that they bring in are also pretty good, especially when they interact with the original trio.
Yeah. And then, last thing, in terms of anything that we have any notes on or anything, is in addition to all of this, Sandland also has a video game now.
That's right. Yes, there's also a video game adaptation. The game was developed by ILCA, which is a studio that started as support on games like Dragon Quest XI, Naruto Shippuden Ninja Storm 4, and Pokemon Home. They have a close relationship with Bandai Namco and have worked on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, as well as One Piece Odyssey. The Sandland game is an action role-playing game that runs on Unreal Engine 5, and Toriyama even got to play the beta a bit before he passed away. I'm not sure.
Did you play this game at all?
I have not. I heard about it before I was aware that Sandland was like a Toriyama thing, and I hadn't paid much attention to it. And then I found out that it was a Toriyama thing, and I was like, well, I should probably look into this a little bit more.
Yeah, I didn't look into the game too much. I saw some reviews that basically say it's okay.
Okay.
It's like a lot of customizing your tank and stuff to drive around. I don't know. I didn't get too deep into the game. I felt like I read the whole manga and I read I watched the whole show, and I did a whole lot of looking into Hindu deities. I did not also look at the game.
From what I've seen about it so far, it's kind of just like an open world action RPG. You've got the tank, you do tank customization stuff, you've got your crew, and you just run around exploring stuff. And then, there's storyline and all that stuff too, but I think the main gameplay elements are more just about like exploring the land itself.
And I think the story is very similar to... I think the story is just the story of the manga and the anime.
That seems pretty likely, in all honesty.
That was kind of another piece, is I was like, okay, I did like it, but I don't really need to or want to go through it a third time here.
No, but this would be a good one for one of our video game episodes, though, I think.
Maybe. At least check it out and talk about it. Yeah. So, yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I had some issues with some of the plot holes and contrivances and things, but you know what I thought was awesome visually, both in the manga and especially in the anime, was anytime they went to a place where there was, like, when they find the springs or the water...
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought like the reveals of those, like the reveal of the spring and then the reveal of the dam were like super impressive.
Yeah, just the amount of like detail and that he just layered into it, and which also again makes that choice of picking a desert setting really powerful, because then when he does put that much work into the scenery, it just pops that much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. He could say he's doing it because of laziness, but we all know that that's not the only reason.
As he's going, why did I write this scene in here with all of this background?
Why I gotta draw this damn tank again? I could see how that would be like a, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, because like it's this incredibly technical piece of drawing, but then at the same time, like he's also got to make sure that he's keeping its design consistent and like the location of all the different parts of it located in the same, like throughout the story.
I like that the tank feels like a character almost too.
Yes, I was going to say it once they acquire it, it does feel like it's part of the group.
Yeah, it's like its own character, kind of.
Especially with all the wacky stuff that they do with it.
So yeah, I had fun visiting it. It's, I don't know. I wonder, could it support many more seasons?
I don't see why it couldn't, but I'm a little worried that they might have jumped the shark as far as stakes are concerned. If they go back to something that's more Sandland centric, as opposed to starting to involve like neighboring countries and things like that, I feel like you could get a lot of longevity out of it. Just three dudes in some kind of vehicle riding around solving problems. Yeah, I'd watch that show, definitely.
Yeah, I might. I had fun. I had a good time with this. I would say the manga is like an easy recommendation because it'll take you a couple hours at most.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the anime is a like, I don't know, at the very least. I'm trying to think how I would phrase this. Would I say at the very least check it out to see the piece that you already know the story of, or would I say, if you're on the fence, check out just the new part?
I feel like if you've read the manga, I feel like it's worth watching the first half just for the differences in the story.
Yeah.
And then the second half I feel like is a way to take the temperature on if this is something you might be interested in long term. I feel like if you're a fan of Toriyama at all, especially if you enjoy the Dragon Ball portion, this is a must watch in my opinion.
This is and I mean we've mentioned it more than once. This is like Toriyama's Mad Max.
Yeah, it's Mad Max for kids.
and I dig that. Like Mad Max is my jam, and this has a lot of that in it. People in crazy vehicles and crazy outfits with crazy names in a desert, like, and water is the biggest commodity. I mean,
oh yeah.
It's awesome. It's Mad Max. Mad Max is that's everything we have on Sandland, I think. That's at least everything I have.
It's everything I got.
Okay. And that's one episode of our what we call Dragon Ball-oween, because we couldn't think of any better name for it. Where
also because we just wanted to put ball and ween in the same name.
Now I can't ever unsee that now.
You're welcome.
Damn it. But so what, if you're new to the show, what we do in October is we look at stuff that either Toriyama worked on otherwise, or that people working in Dragon Ball worked on otherwise, just to try and sort of expand our horizon beyond Dragon Ball a little bit, which we never ever do during our regular show. We don't take sidetrack discussions into talking about kaiju or universal monsters or
what? No, why would we do this? Is a Dragon Ball podcast.
Exactly.
Why would we ever?
But so yeah, that's what during October we do these, like, try and pick up just other things that are sort of related. That means that later this month we'll be doing a commentary. I think we haven't decided on what yet, but
it's going to be good though, we promise.
But we'll do that. Look forward to that, and look forward to our mini-sodes in October also, where each of us records a little short individual episode talking about a top 10. And that's because I love Halloween. I love October, and it's hard. You can only do like scary Dragon Ball like what, once, twice, maybe.
Yeah, that's about it.
And then you run out of stuff real quick. So our idea was like, let's do just other stuff.
Why not?
Unless you got anything else.
Not much. Just
we should give our scores.
Yes, I was gonna say. I give this 7 Dragon Balls. This was great. Wow.
Yeah, I'm at a 6. 6 out of 7 Dragon Balls. Not quite perfect to me. But
I'll allow it.
I did really like it. I personally really love watching Toriyama go back to the well, so to speak. Like, I like seeing him pick up elements from earlier works and doing them again. He did his Rain World again, and he kind of revisits the whole, like, Beelzebub gets kind of his Super Saiyan 2 moment, his Gohan's Rage moment, if you will. I don't know. I like seeing him do that and kind of just play on that again. It's fun to me to see that. And yeah, I'd give Sandland a pretty strong recommendation. I enjoyed it.
I'd almost say that if if you've never watched Dragon Ball or you're not familiar with Toriyama stuff, I feel like this would be a great way to introduce yourself to the kinds of things that he likes to do. Because it's short, it's easily digestible, and from there, if you like it, maybe you'll like some of his other stuff. If you don't, then maybe he's not for you, and you can go find something else to do. But I feel like it's a strong entry point for folks that have not been exposed to Toriyama.
And if you don't like
before.
it, then listen to all the other episodes of this podcast to find out why you're wrong.
Perfect.
And I'll throw in a mention here. Make sure, give us a like, a rating, a review, whatever, all those things. It just helps us out. It makes me feel good when I get one of those. Will we play the Sandland video game eventually? And what will we choose for our movie commentary later this month? Find out next time and help us achieve our final forum.
Final Form is written and produced by Tom Gwelly. It is performed by Dan Kinney and Tom Gwelly. Our webmaster is Dan Kinney. Our theme music is provided by YouTube content creator GVG Kid. Want to learn more about the Dragon Ball universe, including concept art, behind-the-scenes interviews, and recommendations from Jelli and Bekinney? Connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Forum Pod. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you receive your podcasts. And of course, make sure to share it with your friends and family and help us spread the word of the glory of Lord Frieza. The Frieza Force thanks you for your listenership.